Someone you love is lying on the ground in front of you, and they are not moving. They were warm this morning. They spoke to you yesterday, and now something has left, and it is not coming back, and you have no word for what has happened, because no one has invented one yet. There is no funeral, no priest, no ritual, no idea of heaven, no grave, no ceremony. Nobody has told you what to do, because in the entire history of life on Earth, no animal has ever done anything. When a wolf dies, the pack walks away. When an elephant dies, and this matters, hold on to it, something stranger happens. But for almost every creature that has ever lived, death is simply an ending, and the body is simply left where it falls. So here you are, the first kind of animal in 4 billion years to stand over a dead body and feel that walking away is wrong. And you have no instructions. What do you actually do? The answer to that question is one of the most important things that ever happened to our species, because the moment humans started dealing with death, instead of ignoring it, may be the exact moment we became human at all. And what your ancestors did with their dead is so strange, so tender, and in some cases so disturbing, that it rewrites what you think primitive means. Let's start with the animals, because it makes the human part hit harder. Most animals genuinely do not react to death. A mother will carry a dead infant for a while. Grief or confusion, we can't be sure, but the species that seem to recognize death, that pause at it, are rare, and they're the ones we already suspect are clever. Elephants will stop at the bones of another elephant. They'll touch the skull with their trunks, turn it over, stand with it, sometimes return to the same bones for years. Whatever that is, it's not nothing, but even elephants don't bury. They don't come back with tools. They don't leave the dead arranged. The gap between noticing death and doing something deliberate about it is a canyon, and as far as we know, exactly one kind of animal ever crossed it: us. And it turns out, maybe not only us, because the oldest chapter of this story doesn't belong to modern humans at all. It belongs to a creature with a brain smaller than yours that lived hundreds of thousands of years ago, and it's the single most controversial discovery in this entire field. Deep in a cave system in South Africa, down a passage so narrow that adult researchers had to be selected for their ability to fit through gaps a few inches wide, scientists found a chamber full of bones. Not one skeleton. Many, a different, older human species, Homo naledi, with a brain roughly a third the size of ours. And here is the problem that broke the argument wide open. That chamber is incredibly hard to reach. Pitch black, deep underground, accessible only through a vertical chute barely wide enough for a body. There is no evidence these bodies were washed in by water. No sign a predator dragged them there. So how did multiple bodies of the same species end up again and again in the most inaccessible pit in the cave? The team's answer was explosive. They were put there, deliberately, carried in the dark through terrifying passages by others of their kind, a species with a brain the size of an orange, doing something we thought required a mind like ours, deliberately placing their dead somewhere separate, somewhere chosen. Not everyone accepts it. It's fiercely debated to this day, but if it's true, it means the impulse to do something with the dead is far, far older than us, that it might not be a mark of human intelligence at all, but something deeper and older that we inherited. Now come forward to creatures more like us, and the evidence gets firmer, and it gets moving. The Neanderthals, the other humans, the ones we usually picture as brutes, buried their dead. In several caves across Europe and the Middle East, Neanderthal bodies have been found in positions that don't happen by accident, curled up on their side, limbs deliberately folded, placed in a dug hollow. One famous site produced a skeleton that some researchers believe was surrounded by clusters of ancient pollen, leading to the idea, romantic and hotly contested, that he was buried on a bed of flowers. That flower claim may not hold up. The pollen could have arrived other ways, but strip the flowers away and the harder fact remains. These were not people who left their dead where they fell. They dug, they arranged, they placed. Something in them, as in us, said not like this, do it properly. And that word, properly, is the whole story. Because a burial isn't about the body doesn't care. A burial is about the living, about the people standing over it deciding that this person still means something even now that they've stopped. That's not a practical act. You don't dig a grave to survive. You dig it because you can't bear not to. Then modern humans arrive, and the dead start taking things with them. This is the detail that should stop you, because it quietly proves something enormous. Across the ancient world, we start finding graves where the dead were buried with objects, tools, beads, necklaces of shell and bone and animal teeth, some representing thousands of hours of work. Food, weapons, ochre, the red pigment, sprinkled over bodies so often across so many separate cultures that the color red and death seem bound together deep in the human mind. At one site in Russia, roughly 30,000 years old, two children were buried covered in thousands of ivory beads, each one carved by hand from mammoth tusk, a labor of untold hours buried in the ground, on children, never to be seen again. Think about what that means. You do not give your most valuable possessions to a corpse if you believe the corpse is just meat. You do it because somewhere in your mind, you believe they are going somewhere and might need them. Grave goods are the oldest physical evidence we have of an idea that has no bones, no fossil, no trace. The idea that death is not the end. The belief in an afterlife is invisible to archaeology, but a child buried with 5,000 beads is that belief, made solid in the ground. That is the birth of religion, not in a temple, in a grave. But it wasn't all tenderness, and this is where it gets genuinely dark, because dealing with death didn't always mean burial, and some of what humans did with their dead is hard to hear. In some places and times, humans ate them. Cannibalism appears repeatedly in the archaeological record, and not always from starvation. Sometimes the marks on the bones, cut marks, deliberate breaking to reach the marrow, sit right alongside signs of care. There's a haunting category archaeologists call mortuary cannibalism. Consuming the dead not out of hunger, but as the funeral itself, a way of keeping the person inside the living, literally. To some cultures, eating your dead relative was the most respectful, most loving thing you could possibly do. The opposite of abandonment, horrifying to us, sacred to them. At one English cave site, human bones were worked into cups, skulls cleaned, shaped, and turned into vessels. We don't fully know why. Reverence, ritual, something we've lost the key to entirely. And in other places, the dead weren't buried or consumed. They were kept. Skulls of ancestors plastered, painted, given shell eyes, and set up in the home. Displayed, talked to, perhaps. The dead not sent away but kept in the room, part of the family long after death, watching over the living from a shelf. Step back and look at the whole sweep of it, because a pattern emerges that tells you something about yourself. Every single one of these, the bodies in the deep cave, the folded Neanderthal, the bead-covered children, the eaten relatives, the plastered skulls, everyone is a human being refusing to accept that death is just an ending, refusing to walk away like the wolves do. The specific answers are wildly different, some beautiful, some disturbing, but underneath all of them is the same refusal. This person still matters. I will not treat them as nothing. No other animal does this. A chimpanzee, brilliant as it is, does not bury its mother with her favorite things. Only humans look at death and insist on giving it meaning. Insist that the ending isn't allowed to be just an ending. And here's the thought to leave you with. We think of ourselves as the species that makes tools or fire or language. But there's a case that the truest mark of a human mind is this. We are the animal that cannot let the dead simply be dead. Everything else, religion, ritual, the afterlife, the flowers we still put on graves today, the fact that you would find it unbearable to walk away from someone you loved and leave them on the ground. All of it began in the deep past, with someone standing exactly where you might stand one day, over a body that was warm this morning, deciding that walking away was wrong. They had no word for death, but they knew, the way you know, that something had to be done, and they were the first creatures in the history of the earth who did.